coincidence? It might be a coincidence. I personally don't believe in coincidences in life. I mean, this decision, the Thermopylae one, is, to use a good Greek expression, I think it's a Greek expression, a Pyrrhic victory. What has happened is that Turkey may have got what it wanted through the assistance of Sir Michael Wood at the European Court of Human Rights. But what it's done is to say, okay, instead of Turkey having to pay all these damages through the European Court of Human Rights, it will have to pay through the Property Commission. And it's also going to mean that these cases are going to start coming through a lot quicker. Lobby hasn't yet concluded what advice it's going to give to its members about how to use the Property Commission. I mean, I heard very clearly what Kounoupias said, and personally I have a lot of sympathy with it. I think he may well be right. Mass applications may be the way to go. But we haven't yet concluded our views. What this case does do, though, together with the Apostolides case, is to absolutely vindicate refugee property rights. Completely clearly. What it does is to say, not for the first time, refugees have never lost the rights to their property in the occupied north of Cyprus. There are many ways that you can use now to enforce those rights, but it's not going to happen by itself. You need to do something about it. And it's interesting, again, someone else mentioned this point, I think it was Kounoupias. We seem to be looking at political solutions that seem to have at their core the undermining of these very important basic human rights which we have fought so hard to achieve in the courts. You know, it seems to be very curious. Everybody that we've ever approached in a court has confirmed our legal rights. And yet we seem to be prepared, possibly, to give them up. Now, I'm not a politician, but I think these cases seem to have arrived at a very, very interesting time. You know, usually you get something major happening every 2 or 3 years, and the Cyprus issue has gone on for a long time and not very much has happened in that time. But I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but it looks to me that the diplomatic and legal traffic is really, really building up. And the last time I remember this happening was in 2004, when we were then presented with the announcement. And I'm sure there are others in the room who are much better qualified to tell us of what's going on. But I just make these points. There does seem to be a lot of traffic, and Kounoupias talked about perhaps we should be waiting before we start bringing lots of cases before the Property Commission. And that wait will depend on what happens with the political discussions that have been going on, which, again, some people say are going nowhere, and other people, different days, say are going very well. I just make a number of observations. There seems to be a lot happening recently. I find it very curious that in the last few weeks, Erdogan should have given this press conference to the Greek Cypriot journalists. What did he say? He said a number of things, but there were 2 things that jumped out at me. One was Turkey supported by zonal, by communal federal solution in Cyprus. Now, that was an interesting observation. Whether he's telling the truth or not, I don't know. But if you take it at face value, that is a kick in the teeth to the hardliners in the occupied area, who are clearly pushing for a much more confederal solution, including Orams. So it may have been said as something to bolster Talat. So he said that. We don't know whether it's what he meant by it. At the same time, we had what I've called the de-recognition of the TRNC. Was it a coincidence that the Thermopylae decision and this de-recognition of the TRNC happened almost in the same week as Erdogan gave a press conference to Greek Cypriot journalists and said we supported by zone and by communal solution? It might be coincidence. What I would say, though, is that most of us lawyers were expecting the Thermopylae decision to come out sometime between May and September. Why did it come out in March? I'll flag that with you. Also, could again be coincidence. There seemed to be a lot of activity in Turkey to lock up all the hardliners, all the military people who would definitely oppose Turkey giving way in Cyprus. Is it a coincidence that they should all suddenly be arrested and put in prison? prison and put on trial for treason. Could be. Could be coincidence again. And that's what's happening in Turkey. What about what's happening on our side? Well, you've heard me say I'm perfectly happy to put my head up and be shot. I think the Demopoulos decision is not such a bad decision. It's got a lot of things in it which I'm unhappy about, but there's a lot of things in it which I'm quite pleased about. There has been, in my view, a completely massive overreaction to this case in Cyprus and elsewhere. Everyone makes it appear that this is a complete disaster. Is it a disaster to be told that your human rights and your property rights are going to be enforced and Turkey is going to have to pay for it? Why has there been such a massive overreaction? There are other things that are surprising me, which again could be coincidence. If you'd said to me a week ago that the Archbishop would be going to the occupied area and talking to the Turkish TRNC Minister of Tourism and having a cup of coffee with him and then going and seeing Erdogan next week, I said, you're mad. But that's what happened 2 days ago. Coincidence? What about all the opposition towards legal action? What about the President and what Constantis was saying about the President warning people not to bring cases? What about this editorial in the Cyprus Mail saying that lawyers shouldn't be running the Cyprus issue and it should all be resolved politically? Coincidence? What about the fact that 2 weeks ago, as I understand it, the government issued a leaflet all about what federation means to you? Now, as I think I'm right in saying, the idea of a bizonal federal solution has been around since about 1975, 77, I'm not sure of the exact date. So it's a pretty long time. And yet I think this is the first time there's been any guidance or any opinion by a government as to what federation means. Coincidence? There seems to be a lot of coincidences, don't you think? What seems to be happening, and I'll say what I think is happening, and I'm probably wrong, is that I think what you're seeing is an attempt by the mediators in Cyprus, so by that I mean the UN, to try to reduce and to lower the expectations of the hardliners on each side. So the Turks are trying to rein in and to reduce the expectations of the hardliners who want the confederal solution in Cyprus, on one hand, and on the other hand, our government seems to me, and certainly some of the media in Cyprus, seem to me to be trying to rein in and reduce the expectations of the so-called hardliners on our side. So by doing that, you then start getting more realistic positions and more common ground. And if you've got that common ground, you then possibly have the basis of a settlement. That's what I think seems to be happening. But events are moving so quickly that before people have a real opportunity to analyse what's happening, you're faced with a situation as we were faced in 2004. So just to sum up, and to try and bring together three speeches and the points I wanted to make, I wanted to emphasise that we should be continuing this fight for the rule of law. It may well be that the next time we're all in the room together, another solution has been presented to us, despite all the pessimism of the talks of the last few months. I found it interesting that, and I wasn't at either meeting, that both Chris Bryant, who I think is the Minister for Europe, and also Gordon Brown recently publicly stated that there seems to be progress in the Cyprus talks. Do they know something we don't? I'm sure our friends from the Foreign Office will enlighten us. So I do think that if you care about the solution in Cyprus, and if you care about your property, and I'm sure you will do, you will want to do something to ensure that your rights are respected and that the rule of law prevails. I would like us as lobby, and as lobby's friends here this evening, to send a message to those that are trying perhaps to put through the back door a solution that undermines our human rights and our property rights, that they will